everybody. Welcome back. My name is Chad Brock.
I am Zach Bailiff.
You guys are watching or listening to the Orion podcast. Stay tuned.
Oh,
What in the world? You got to turn it on. There we go. There we go.
I
back,
thought
everybody.
maybe the batteries were dead.
I've got more. Kim bought a bunch of batteries over the weekend, so we're good. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Orion podcast. Man, it is good to be back. It's good to be talking about outdoorsy things. The Cooler Podcast, telling cooler stories, even cooler stories. Brought to you by none other than Orion Coolers. Check us out. Just lowered our prices. JacksonKayak.com. Jackson Kayak. Yeah. Orion Coolers is powered by Jackson Kayak. And now new announcement, special announcement.
Ooh.
Bassco Fishing. Check them out at basscofishing.com. Get your shirt. They make custom shirts. They make regular everyday shirts, and they got some pretty good looking stuff. So check out Bassco. Hit them up. Let them know the Orion podcast sent you. House cleaning's done, man. How are you? We didn't.
Good.
We've both been so busy. We haven't even had much time to talk.
No, we've been running around like chickens with our head cut off. Finally got in a tree this weekend. First time I've ever hunted deer in September.
Yeah, and you was like in somebody's backyard from the pictures that you sent.
Basically, yeah. It was a little housing development there, and just north of Pittsburgh, we'll call it. And yeah, it was different. So that's the only unit in the state, at least close to me, that opens up this early in the year. So it opened September 17th, and we got out, had a good morning. Saw probably 6 or 7 does, groundhog, fat raccoon. And I should have had one in the truck, but you know how it is. Knocking the rust off first hunt of the year. I got busted getting the bow off the hook. So such is life. It was good to have does at 20 yards. So
well, it's a long season, man, and more opportunities are they're on the way.
Yep. With every rep, you get a little bit better. So
absolutely. For myself, it was back fishing, the old USA Bassin big boat tournament. Yeah, took on the big waters of the luxurious Lake Monroe. 100+ boat tournament. Ended up qualifying for the USA Bassin Classic on the first go. Don't have to fish 2 regionals. Made it. Nice. So the cabin is as of Monday is officially rented at Pickwick, and we are headed to Pickwick in May. So stoked about that. Ready to get back down on the Tennessee River, make some long casts with the old ball and chain Carolina rig, and see if we can't catch a few big ones.
Yeah, that'll be good.
There's good smallmouth in Pickwick too, so maybe I'll get lucky.
Get a few pointers from tonight's guest.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll get as lucky as tonight's guest. So tonight's guest, he is a very well accomplished, very well educated, very well spoken angler that is on his way to 30,000 catches. That's hard to fathom. Myself, I don't keep count. I never have, mainly because my brain runs at 190 miles an hour. So it makes it very hard for me to keep count. I remember a lot of things, but I can't keep count. I'm just terrible at it. Some days I can't even keep count. No, you're the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
without further ado, tonight's special guest, one Mr. Bill Schultz.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us, Bill. There we go. Now we got you in the right block.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
So what are you up to today, Bill, besides doing the Orion podcast?
Well, I drove back from Southwest Wisconsin, where I've been the last 2 days, fished about 3.5, 4 hours each day, and added 106 smallmouth to my total.
That ain't a bad couple days.
Yeah.
No, not
And,
at all.
Yeah, today was a little, as I mentioned, a little tougher, 90 degrees and waders, some Columbia pants underneath, 2 shirts and a vest. And that last hill I had to climb, that wasn't fun, but it was a fun day with, obviously a lot of little fish on the small rivers, but the last 2 days there were a few 2.5 pounders and others that were close to that. So it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. That is good to hear. So
I don't know if I could drink enough water wearing that many clothes in 90-degree heat.
no, that'd be a lot of clothes in 90-degree heat. The water's probably what's the cold part.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, it was the refreshing part of it because all those cows on those pastures that I walked through, most of them were standing in the water watching me.
So you had good company.
It's fun.
It's fun. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit before we talk about getting into the 30,000 fish and some of your tips and tricks that you have for us tonight. I would love to hear, Bill, about how you got started in fishing. That's one of the things that we like to tell here on the Orion podcast. We like to hear everybody's backstory, and I want to ask you those same questions. Like, how did you go from a swimmer in college to being the fisherman that you are today?
Well, like a lot of people, my grandfather, who was a big-time circus performer, and then moved back to Manitowoc, Wisconsin when he was in his early 40s and married. My dad was born. And my grandfather and my dad fished in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And, early on, 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, I fished a little bit with my grandfather before he passed. And then my dad in Madison, Wisconsin, we packed 2, 3, I had 3 brothers and a sister. And Lake Mendota was known for perch. And, we do that. So, through my, grade school years and even to high school, we go to Canada every once in a while. And even I know once when I was swimming at Wisconsin, my youngest brother and I and my dad went to Canada. And then things, you get away from it. For me, swimming was all I could do well enough to swim at a Big Ten university. I actually spent and still spend my time, playing racquetball, which I'm probably one of the few players in the United States that's played in 7 decades. And so I went from swimming to racquetball, which kept me very busy. But going to a brother-in-law's dad's resort in Hayward, Wisconsin in 1991, sitting in a little boat with a small engine, the bug bit me again. So that winter, Becky and I bought our first fishing boat, a 16.5-foot boat with a 90 horsepower engine, and I began fishing. And you joked about keeping track, and I wrote an article a couple of years ago for Badger Sportsman on keeping a fishing log, and I did it somewhat tongue-in-cheek because I joked about my dad ran the YMCA's in Madison, and I'd see all the big weightlifters in the gym keeping track in their little loose leaf of their workouts. And when I swam at Wisconsin, I kept track of the yards every practice. I'd keep track in my head, and I'd add it to a 3x5 card in my wallet back before computers. And then with the racquetball, just, I kind of kept little logs, simple, the date, who I played, scores, and a few notes. So obviously when I started playing, fishing in 92, I just continued. I started off keeping a log. And to be honest with you, I'm really happy I did, because that's, how I can tell you that in May of 94, I caught my first smallmouth bass. Over the next 4 years, I caught about 600. And then I got a little more serious in 1998 and I'm sitting at 29,700 and something right now. And I like to joke that that's how I started. Now that I'm older, hey, keeping track of those fish every day, that's really good for my mind. So hopefully that'll keep me, sharp as I continue to get older. But that's what, it's fun for me. That's my competition. I don't fish tournaments. I love smallmouth bass. My goal starting in about 2000 was always 1,000 a year. And most years I'd make it. My best year before last year was 2007, just over 2,000. Last year I hit just under 2,600. And I guess the numbers, when I approached 20,000 in June of 2017, that's when I started thinking about it. In fact, I remember stopping fishing on a river with 2 fish to go, heading to Sturgeon Bay, hoping that 20,000 would be a picture fish. And up there for me, a picture fish is 4 pounds or bigger. And I was very fortunate. One of the lures I'm going to show you, it was 4.5 pounds. And the same thing happened last year, where on August 2nd, I stopped fishing on one of my rivers in southeast Wisconsin, needing 2 smallies to hit 25,000. On August 4th, again, in the Sturgeon Bay area on the Lake Michigan side, very slow day, but to my good fortune, number 25,000 was 4.5 pounds. Well, that was August 4th last year at 25,000. And shockingly, in about 14 months, I'm going to be having a 5,000 increase to where I'm sitting 297 away from 30,000. And my goal is to get within 4 or 5 in my waders. And then whether I'm in my Coosa FD, Jackson Coosa FD, which I have up in Sturgeon Bay, or my Yarcraft, I'd like to hopefully have a chance at a little bigger fish for 30,000. But it could still be just 2 pounds. But I'm hoping it's maybe 4 or 5. Who knows?
Now, talking about taking notes and different things, I know a lot of anglers take notes in different ways. Let's kind of go through some of the notes that you take that have helped you through all these years. I mean, because you probably look back at them a lot to see different weather patterns and the different things that go on. So what are some of the things?
Conditions and
water conditions. What are some of the things that go into your notes as you take these trips out?
Okay, guys, here we go with the KISS. Keep it simple, Schultz. I don't make many notes. My log, they're super simple. Like today, there's the date, there's the river I fished, there's the fact that I fished for 3.5 hours, and there's the fact that I caught 56 smallmouth with a 2.5 pounder and a couple 2 pounders. When I'm on the small rivers, I keep track of 2 pounds and bigger. When I'm on the big water, it's got to be 4 pounds or bigger. So that's it. I do go back from time to time, like before the podcast. I just, for fun, I want to say, when was my first outing on a small river? Well, it was August 7th, 1994, on the river I was on today. So that's about what I do. I have a pretty good, when you're on a similar type water, small rivers or Sturgeon Bay, Door County, where I've fished since 1995, 700-800 days on the water up there, I have a pretty good feel for things. So for me, and because I don't use many lures, which we're going to talk about, it makes it real simple for me. I have musky friends that are like me on the St. Croix Pro staff that keep elaborate, it's this side of the full moon, it's that side of the full moon. The water temp was 48 degrees. I used a big frickin' MEP spinner and, things like that. I'm the farthest thing away from that. I don't fault that, but it would take a little more of my time than I want. And that's sort of like, I love seeing videos, but if all I did was sit in my kayak or in my boat or my waders with a thing on my head and did videos, that would take away from my fishing time. So I don't, I keep the logs, the logs are more related to date, where I'm at, how many hours I fished, am I in waders, am I in a boat, or am I in a kayak, and how many smallies. So pretty simple.
Wow, that's definitely interesting. I didn't know.
Although, guys, I have to say, I gotta grab something, only because I will tell you that about 20 years ago, I began using Rick Taylor's astro tables and his calendars, and I did an article with Rick a couple of years ago. Rick is not just the best; he's like many steps above anyone else. His software is patented to how he puts these together. So I typically, this is just the little one, but I'm typically on the water, not so much the rivers, but when I'm on the big waters of Green Bay or Lake Michigan, typically if you look at his calendar, and the simple thing is his scale is a 0 to 100, 50 and above is good. I'm typically on the water up there when it's in the upper 40s or better. Rivers aren't as critical. I don't think it makes as big a difference. Today was like a 43, and it was a great day. I've had 100 plus days when the rating has been lousy. So I do follow the moon phase, solar, lunar tables that Rick puts together. I started it because when I was working, if I had to pick a week in May, and this week is a 50 to a 90 down to a 50, and the next week is a 20 up to a 50 down to a 20, all things being equal, I'm going to grab the week that's got potentially more active fish. And Zach, you talked about hunting. These are hunting and fishing tables. So same thing with, the big deer. When are they moving? When are they more active?
Yeah. We pay a lot of attention to, obviously full moon nights. The red moon each month is a big one, for us when the rut's approaching and things of that nature.
I will tell you, in Rick's book, this is funny. I mean, Rick's book, which he wrote several years ago, it's a good book, 100 pages. Before I did the article, I read it, and Rick noted he had never, ever rated a day a 100. And I emailed him, I go, Rick, can you go back to like year 2000 and check like June 30th? And he got back to me and goes, yeah, Bill, I wrote the book, I know that. Yet one day in 20 years was a 100. And I was in Sturgeon Bay on Green Bay fishing with something that I don't fish up there anymore, but this was years ago. This is a phenomenal river lure, the little Rebel teeny wee crawfish. But I was on the water those days, June 29th, June 30th, and July 1st. I caught 240 smallmouth. That's back when the fishing was better and there was lots of schools. I only had one fish that was legal.
Wow.
But I caught a lot. They were very active.
Now, how many days, Bill, would you say a year are you putting in to kind of get out there and accomplish these goals?
This is not all of every day, because especially with the waiting, like today and yesterday, it was like it was basically a half a day. Yesterday I was on the, from 9:15 to about 1:15. Today it was about 8:30 to about 12:30 with walking, because I'm walking these farm pastures. So last year, I think with it being until this year, my all-time biggest numbers year, I was on or in the water all or part of 97 days, because obviously Wisconsin, it's early May when the season opens, through usually early November, if the weather, cooperates.
Yeah. And I mean, we've got really our first big front of the season's going to push down here in the next couple of days.
I drove back from Southwest Wisconsin with a big thunderstorms to my north, and it was 89, 90 degrees when I left. And when I got home, it was 74. And in Thursday, I can tell you that we're going to head up to our little place in Sturgeon Bay. They're showing a high of 57 with northwest winds at 15 to 25.
Ooh, so, that's big win for the big water.
That is big winds, and you can't fish Green Bay when you've got that kind of winds. But obviously I know plenty of places where you can sort of get out of the wind. But I have to tell you, that's why I've liked my Coosa FD the last few years, because you can hold yourself when you're in wind with, backpedaling, and it's pretty nice. It's almost like having the spot lock, which is one of my favorite features of all time on my Minn Kota trolling motor.
Yeah, that pedal drive makes all the difference in the world for the windy days.
Yes, it's we great. Are. We have become big fans of the flex drive system with Jackson, and it's great.
And I love to paddle. I have to tell you, I've got a Kraken 15.5 that I'm never going to sell up there, and I got a 13.5 here. I love to paddle, but when you're in 2 to 3 footers on big water, it's tough to fish when you're being blown all over.
Absolutely. There's been some days just here on the local lake, I mean, once your big boats and stuff like that even get out there, not so much the wind, but that pedal drive system can be very beneficial in helping you just spin the boat to take on some wake or whatever might be out there on the water. I mean, that's
when you fish, the number of days I have on what I call the big water, when you don't want it dead calm, you want some ripples or something. But I would take literally 3 footers, which I fished in many, many times. And the spot lock, it's amazing. I open my windshield, I put the spot lock on the boat. It swings with the nose into the wind, and I can fish off the back. It's great. And that's where, like on the Coosa FD, the Mark IV now is phenomenal. And it's a great way to hold yourself on a rough day, and allows you to fish.
Absolutely. And for those of you watching, just kind of a quick little plug here. We actually do at jacksonkayak.com. We have the Mark IV on sale right now in the store and at select local dealers. So if you guys are interested in upgrading your current FD boat to the new Mark IV drive, check it out at jacksonkayak.com, and you guys can find yourself in a brand new Mark IV.
I'm going to do it. I got a 2021 that I'm going to buy the new Mark IV system for.
Oh, it's worth it. It really is, in my opinion. So jumping back into this, I'm going to kind of let Zach take us down the road of fitness here, Bill. We know that you do a lot of working out, and I'm going to let him ask some fishness. Let's go with that. Fishness. It's a new word. That is for Gene Wilson. Fishness questions. That is for Gene Wilson, because it's chatterisms.
Someday Gene and I are going to fish together, whether I go for the big largemouth down there, or she comes up and I get her into a 5 or 6 pound smallmouth.
You go down there, she's going to have you playing with the gators. So
I tell her that I'm too far north to go play with alligators.
So coming from a swimming background, how have you adapted your fitness over the years to what you do now, as far as kayaking and wading and injury prevention all the way around? Because I mean, wading in a creek is obviously a little bit hazardly at times, and you can't see the bottom, and you're just kind of feeling as you go.
Yeah, Zach, those are actually really good questions, because I grew up with my dad running the Madison YMCA's, and I've got 3 younger brothers, former Mr. Wisconsin, one who won the last tough man contest in Wisconsin with 5 knockouts in the heavyweight division. So I've been around, a lot of athletes through the years. I saw just on Facebook that 2 of my Australian swimming friends, who were both in the 72 and 76 Olympics, were at their 50th reunion of the 72 Australian Olympic team. So, and for me, you do things as a kid, swimming at the Y, and like I said, swimming is a great sport. It just was the only thing I could do well enough, and I was a very average Big Ten swimmer, that I could compete at the university. I was so excited when I could finish swimming and start racquetball. But what I've done, it was swimming through, 1972 and then racquetball. And only since COVID have I really not been playing much. And, I was sometimes going 200, 225 matches a year, 8, 10 tournaments. It's been nice to have as many state championships as I have and be involved like that. But I always tried to lift weights. I'm not a big guy. I'm 160 pounds now, probably lost some weight. But you're right, Zach, with the weighting, as you get older, it's kind of one of the things about getting older that sucks. Your balance is not as good. I'm pretty good. I don't stumble much in the water. I try to wade when I can see the bottom and 3-4 feet. Sometimes it's less. I'm wearing polarized glasses. I've not used a wading staff yet. I'm 71 years old, and I go to the gym 3-4 times a week to lift, and I do cardio quite a few days. And I think this winter, and my wife's in very good shape, and she's a family nurse practitioner with a fellowship in integrative medicine, and she's certified yoga instructor and other things. I may this winter start trying to do some yoga and maybe some Tai Chi or something just to help me with my balance, because I would say that, depending on, I think as we get older, I think for me, upper body is great. I'm casting thousands of times, all of this stuff is great. I notice it a little bit with the balance and with the legs. And, especially if you're out 4 or 5 hours and you get tired, that's a recipe for stumbling. And knock on wood, I've only, fallen where it's always in shallow water, but not very often. And I'm happy about that. But what I'm doing is probably really good for me. The wading, that's a balance thing. And I have to tell you, the one river in southeast Wisconsin, it is packed with softball, bowling ball size and boulders. And, it can be, sometimes I'm really surprised I don't fall. You're sitting there you're on one leg and you're ready to go. You got your rod in one hand and one stuck in my belt. And I'm thinking, here I go. And,
those bottoms get slick with all those big round boulders and softball sized rocks down there and stuff. And, you mentioned, fishing for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And Chad and I have discussed it many times. And, the amount of core strength you need to be able to go through a day like that, making all those casts, pulling against current, pedaling, just even holding yourself upright in good posture. I mean, it's really taxing on your low back being part of your core. It's really taxing on that entire system.
Zach, great. I mean, you guys obviously know what you're talking about, but I do find, and I get sometimes tight in my low back after 3-4 hours, and I'm going to, begin doing a little more stretching. And I can blame my legs I don't have, it's like you see the guys at the gym with the big frickin' arms and chest, and they got little skinny legs. They've been not working that part of their body. Yeah. I've been also trying I tell you, we have a new gym less than a mile from my house, and with a great thing to be, only one of the few things to be happy about being on Medicare, I get a free membership.
There you go.
But no, I've been doing more leg stuff. But and you guys are younger guys. You come to a point where you start thinking, how many more years? And I'm hoping a lot. Hey, am I going to hit 50,000? Hey, maybe. We'll see. But I like doing this. I like, the variety of, I love paddling. I love the pedaling. I love the fishing from a kayak. It's super. I like being in my Yarcraft. I got a beautiful Mercury Pro XS 200 that sounds like a Corvette. Even if you're not catching fish, it's unbelievable to hear that thing start. And then I love wading, which I do more wading than anything else, because that's where the numbers are. And I'm not, I don't want to just pack numbers with 6, 7, 8 inch fish. I like it when within, 50 fish on a small river, you get those 8 or 9 fish that are 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. And that's where the last 2 days was kind of fun, because there were a lot of little fish. There were some bigger fish.
Now, and I I would compare wading those rivers to hunting on the ground, bow hunting on the ground, which is something I love to do. And, you mentioned longevity and not knowing how many more years you have left. And I get the question a lot because
no. How many years I've left waiting? I hope I have a lot of years left.
Right. Well, and that's where I'm going is my gym is right over here and I'm in there 5 to 6 days a week. And guys are just like, why are you down there I just don't have time for that. And I'm like, well, I love going out west and chasing elk. I love climbing trees and hunting whitetail. And I want to be able to do that well into my later years,
Hey, listen, Zach, and your arms are almost as big as my thighs. So, obviously,
we call him Captain America.
Yeah, really.
Oh, objects in the camera may be larger than they appear.
Nice pipes.
Good. Now, Bill, we talked. You alluded to keep it simple, Schultz, and I got a feeling this could probably get very broad from everything from rod reel setups, tackle, just everything that you have that you're taking with you. So let's dive into keep it simple, Schultz, or KISS as you call it, just a little bit further and kind of take us through start at your rods and reels, all these items that you're taking with us, and let's get into some lures and talk about what you're using to catch these big smallmouth.
I'll do that. And with the rods and reels, I think I've narrowed it down. And again, I've been fortunate to be on the St. Croix pro staff and now their elite team since 1998. So I've been lucky enough to fish really nice rods. But right now, I'm really using a small, if you look at their rods, when I'm on a river today, I had three different series with me. I had the Bass X, which is $120. I had a Legend X over 400, and I had a Legend Extreme over 600. And I love, by the way, they're all great. I love the Bass X, but they were all 6'10", medium light, extra fast. Which no matter what one of the series I'm using, that is my river rod. For the very first time a week and a half ago, I pulled out their brand new Legend Tournament Bass. They've been redesigned, and I wanted to give them a try. And I got one 7.3 medium light extra fast, a little longer, and I really liked it with the teeny wee crawfish because I got a little more distance. But 6'10 medium light extra fast is my wheelhouse for the rivers. When I'm in the big water in Sturgeon Bay, and we're going to talk about this, I'm using smaller swim baits, the Kitech Fat Swing Impact 2.8 and 3.3. I'm using the Ned Rig with the TRD. I'm using in deeper water, when the fish are in deeper water, and especially later in the fall, I'm using a tube. And I found out on a bad day on middle of August 4 years ago, if you would have asked me what's the best rod up there for a Ned Rig, I would have said, 6'10", medium light, extra fast.
Right.
Well, that was before I lost 4 or 5 to 5+ pound fish because my little Z-Man, this is a Nedlox, but I was probably using the Finesse Shrooms with a TRD, Finesse TRD, in the color I use 99% of the time, green pumpkin goby. That rod didn't have quite enough backbone on the really big fish. So it wasn't getting into their jaw. If they jumped, they'd spit it. They bent the hook. So I began on the big water using 6'10", medium extra fast for the Ned Rig. And I really like the 7'3" medium extra fast for throwing the swim baits. I began using last year when the Victory series came out. I began using that one for a lot of my swim baits. So if you can, you're right. Really, two things. You've got medium light extra fast, medium extra fast in that 6'10" to 7'3" range. That's it. And from a reel standpoint, I do like a little faster retrieve ratio because in clear water up there, many times halfway in, if you don't have a smallie, get it in and get a cast out again, because they've seen your kayak, not as much with the kayak, but they've seen your boat. And that's why I like getting it in fast, getting it back out. Now, as soon as I say that, that's the day that I'm cranking in this swim bait super fast, and I got a 3-pounder planing on the water 10 feet from my boat ready to get it. But so, that's why I like the little faster retrieve ratio. I've liked the reels that I'm using. I have 2 series of the Daiwa, the Tatula, and the Procyon, both in the 2000 series. I love that size. And then I also have enjoyed the Pfluger Supreme and Supreme XT in the 30 size, which is a hair bigger, but not much. Both are they're all light reels. They all have the faster retrieve ratio, although Pfluger changed the redesign on those 2 reels to a slower retrieve ratio.
Right.
Their key engineer, we spoke 2 days ago. He's actually sending me. He wants me to try the new ones. So that's what I use for reels. Line. I like something I can see as I've gotten older. I like I love the Daiwa J braid and chartreuse. It's fabulous because I can see my line. I also have used the nano fill in the fire line because I can see the white. So those are the lines I'm using. 10-pound test, so equivalent to about 2-pound diameter mono. And from 2007 to today, no matter what conditions the water is, I'm using fluorocarbon leaders.
Absolutely.
Sturgeon Bay on the big water, after losing a couple of big fish about 8-9 years ago, I'm using 10-pound fluoro. On the rivers, I'm using 8. To be honest with you, I could use 10 or 12 on the rivers. I could use 12 or up there too. I use a uni to uni knot, and I'm probably starting off with 4.5 feet of fluoro because I hate retying.
Yeah,
when
me
you start
too.
changing. So you guys know about that. Hey, listen, when you're up there in 25-mile-an-hour winds and you got your spot lock on, that's great. But still, it's a challenge, doing your fluoro to your line. So
well, and like you said, man, I mean, the older I get, I notice the less I see good. And when I'm in here in the office, a lot of times, this isn't always a podcast studio, if you guys at home can believe that. A lot of times I'll have everything off this desk and this microphone's pushed out of the way. And this is where I'll set and tie on my lures because I have this light where I can actually see the line. And that makes such a big difference. I mean,
well, I would
not only that, but if you're on a cold weather day out there.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend using white or something like the chartreuse, which I've loved. And then, let's keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, Schultz. Certainly I've tried different things over the years, but it's really been, even back in the day, it's not been that much. And the one thing, I really take this seriously. Virtually nothing that I have in my talks at sports shows, and I've done over 100 talks and have had over 10,000 people at my talks at the bigger sports shows, plus fishing clubs and other things. Not one product that I've used had I not used it before with success before I tell anyone about it, because that goes to my credibility. And I don't want someone saying, hey, yeah, Bill, they gave you that lure. Now you're telling me about it. No. I used it. I had tremendous success with it. Yeah, maybe I get a discount or I get it at no charge, but that's because I'm, doing that. I should mention to the audience, honestly, if anyone's interested, my email, no surprise, is smalleycentral@gmail.com. And I've got a group of over 1,000 smallie enthusiasts from Wisconsin and Illinois that are pretty much all catch and release. They don't bed fish. And I've got some pretty good discounts on a few things that, if you'd like to be on my group and you fit that qualification. But I will tell you that, let's get going with when are my numbers really start going. On the rivers, and I've got two here. I just did a video for them because I've loved, if you go back to literally, almost day one, with I'm dropping sharp little trebles in my crotch.
In your lap.
Yeah, really. I'm sorry.
Be careful, Bill.
But in 1995, I discovered the Rebel teeny wee crawfish. And immediately I discovered how unbelievable it is on small rivers. I'm not talking the Wisconsin River where it can be 2 feet deep and then go to 8 feet deep. I'm talking that river like I was in today or some of the in southeast Wisconsin here, that's 2 to 3 feet deep with a lot of rocks. Well, the teeny wee crawfish swims nose down. It's a 2 to 3 foot diver, and it almost suspends. It floats very slowly to the top. And it's got an unbelievable wiggle and vibration. So it took me a lot of years to figure this out, but it comes with number 14 trebles. I'll tell you right now that a couple of fish I caught today, I would not have caught with just the number 14s. So what I do for about the last 10 years, I take the number 14s off the back and I put a number 10.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you, this is the only lure with a treble that I use because I don't mean to be weird, but I am extremely careful with the smallmouth bass. I've become such a huge fan. I love them. And so even the number 10s are not too bad. But what that does, you will lose many less fish in the current, and it doesn't change the vibration or wiggle. And actually what it does, that slight extra weight, it even floats to the top slower. So this has been in my arsenal since 1995. And I got to tell you, the last 2 years in particular, and this summer, it's been just, again, phenomenal. And again, I don't want to go all the colors. This is stream, which is kind of green. This is chartreuse and brown, and ditch is brown. That's about it. So the guys, this is a phenomenal small river lure. The other so probably out of that almost 30,000, probably 6,000 at least. I haven't kept track per lure. Probably about 6,000 have come on the teeny wee crawfish. The other thing, back in 2007, on my second to the last day, before I had a house up there, I fish in Sturgeon Bay only in May and June. And there was another St. Croix guy who I knew, and I putted over. How you doing? He was doing better than me. I said, geez, what are you catching them on? Well, I'm catching them on the Kalen's Lunker Grub.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, here, let me give you some. And he reaches in, and he like 20 or 30. And my brother's with me. One of my brothers, he goes, hey, can we pay you? No. So anyways, we had better luck. And the next day, I remember when the certain tackle shop was closer to downtown, I tied up my boat at the launch. I almost killed me, ran the 6 blocks to I don't run, I do other things. But I got back, and let me just tell you that beginning in 2008, actually 2007 in the fall, in the rivers, I've only really primarily used 2 colors. And I had the argument on a rainy day with a guy named Tim DeWittiak, who used to be the top guide in Sturgeon Bay. He doesn't guide anymore. He owned the tackle shop. And we were arguing, what's the better size, the 5-inch or the 4-inch? The 3 gets a little small. And I like the 4-inch. So up there, literally smoked salt and pepper, 4-inch. It's got the long, tall, extremely wispy tail that is tough to beat. And the next year, 2008, one of the guys in my group said, Bill, and I'm going to show everybody this. He said, here's the best jig in the world for a Kalen's grub. It's the Gopher Tackle Big John's jig. It's a 2-aught hook. Kind of notice how weird the eyelet is. It's kind of at an angle. and flush with the mushroom head. And Gopher has the patent on the mushroom head name. So anyways, I began using these together. And I discovered in the fall of 2007 that the blue pearl salt and pepper in the 4-inch is phenomenal on small rivers. And I began using the smoked salt and pepper on the clear waters of Sturgeon Bay. In 2014, in May and June, that was the year the numbers peaked up there when Bassmaster named number 1. I only fished in May and June. For every 8 hours I was on the water, no matter the condition, I was averaging 46 smallmouth. And so in May and June of 2014, I caught 714 smallmouth in May and June. This is amazing, but every single one came on the Kalin's Lunker Grub, smoked salt and pepper. So since then, that was my big numbers lure up there. Teeny wee crawfish and the Kalin's big numbers on the rivers. And you guys both being good fishermen, and Chad, you mentioned this earlier. I, for the last 10 years until COVID, I did my own event, which a lot of people thought was the best smallie event in the country. It was an evening event called Smallie Night Out. Sold out immediately. I could only fit 130 people in. I didn't charge very much. And at the end of the evening, I gave away $7,000 worth of great items. And the last time I did it before COVID, even before the St. Croix rod, what do you think went first? The Orion cooler.
The Orion.
That was great. I had a great Orion cooler, but I also for a few years did what I called Smallie Weekend in Sturgeon Bay or Door County. And I stopped doing it simply because everyone who wanted to come to it came to it. I worked it up to about 50 people. And so anyways, one of my friends who's a good river friend of mine wanted to fish with me. This is in June. And we're out on the water. He goes, "Hey, Bill, have you ever tried the Ned Rig?" This is 2016. I go, "I've heard of it." So he's got the Z-Man product, and we dink around some rock jetties and catch some what I call little dock fish. And it's like, okay, let's do something else. Well, let me quickly tell you that on August 1st of 2016, at an island a mile off ashore in Green Bay, I sat in one location for 7 hours with the Green Pumpkin Goby TRD on a Z-Man jig in chartreuse, which is all I use, 62 smallmouth. Okay, well, I'm not from Missouri. You know, you got to prove it to people from Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
Well, later in August, I'm on the river I was at today. I had 4 hours to fish. And the first 15 fish came on the little small Booyah Pond Magic buzzbait. So now I've used an hour. The next 3 hours, I added 65 smallmouth, all on the Ned Rig. And actually, I was using the little Tube Z, which is a little lighter, a little lighter weight. And I'm going, holy mackerel. I just did 80 plus smallmouth, most of them I'm thinking this is great. So one more try, September 2nd, back to that same island with my spot lock on with the TRD, Green Pumpkin Goby, 5 hours, 52 smallmouth. I'm going, this is freaking great. And I would have to say that since August, September of 2016, it's been a big plus to my numbers. Can't, again, tell you the exact numbers, probably about 5,000 smallmouth on the Ned Rig, with most coming on the TRD, Finesse TRD in Green Pumpkin Goby. Some on the rivers, a lot up in Door County. So, okay, so there's two really, really great lures. Now, let's move ahead just a little bit. We've talked about the teeny wee crawfish. We talked about the Kalin's Lunker Grub. we talked about the Z-Man products on the Ned Rig. That's 3 things. We're going to only talk about 3 more things. One of them is 3 years ago, I had been recommended to use the Kitech Fat Swing Impact in either 3.8 or this 3.3. Well, I did better with the 3.3. I did really well in October of about 2019. Well, the next year, I actually began using the 2.8 up there as well as the rivers. And it's been really, really phenomenal. It's tremendous. And typically I'm using, this happens to be black shad. This happens to be alewife. They both, dark on the top, light on the bottom. Yep. I use 4 or 5 colors. I'm using them. They're a great lure, a little bit of a negative. They fall apart sometimes after 1 or 2 fish. Last year, we're going to now go to number 5. Last year, excuse me, on the small rivers, I'd had these for a year or more, never used them. And needless to say, phenomenal. And that is the Z-Man Slim Swims. This little guy, this is the 2.5, which I like more on the rivers. I have one. You aren't going to believe this. Yeah, you are. Maybe you are. But I have one in my wader pocket that is sitting there ready to be put back on that has 102 smallmouth on it.
Wow.
I have a good attorney friend who I've turned on to river fishing. He's got one that he's already done over 150 smallmouth on. Hell, you can buy a couple packages and they last you all year. They're made out of
some durable plastic. Yeah.
They're unbelievable. And then for the bigger water up in Sturgeon Bay, I've liked the 3-inch version. Just so, okay. 2 newer lures that have been, already hundreds of smallmouth. You guys fish tubes?
Yep.
In my talks for years, I'll say, tubes can be great. But with the rocky rivers, you'll hate yourself. You'll be breaking off all the time. And up in Sturgeon Bay, in Door County, the last 10 to 12 years, every rock up to about 12 or 13 feet deep has scum on it, about an inch. It's kind of like brown. That's, by the way, that's why the Ned Rig is so phenomenal up there, because this baby sits there, and because it's made out of the buoyant Elastec, it literally sits up like this.
Yep.
And the waves move it. So I'm sitting up out of that scum. I hardly ever get any scum on it. But 2 years ago, I was beautiful first 10 days of November in Wisconsin on Green Bay, Northeast Wisconsin. And I have to tell you, I've been skunked up there once before. I know that it was Election Day Tuesday, so it was like November 2nd or 3rd. I headed north. I was shocked that the things at work didn't work. I had 2 days where I didn't catch a fish. Not days. I kind of know what's going on. If I'm up there for a few hours, why waste my time? So I come south, and I'm in deep water. And you know what? Don't you guys hate this? When you're sitting there catching 1 or 2 fish, and that guy that's 40 feet away is catching a lot of fish. It
happens.
Well, it was a weekday, not many people around. I think to myself, what the hell? So I put it over with my trolling motor, and I go, hey, hi. I said, I'm Bill Schultz. I said, what's your name? He told me his name. And he's a tournament guy who'd just been 2 weeks earlier south at one of the lakes in Alabama at a tournament where he caught a 13-pound largemouth that knocked him right up into the top 10. But anyways, he said, I'm using 2.5-inch tubes.
Yep.
Wow. I said, I've got some of those. I just don't use them. So that was like Thursday. And I gave it a shot and did a little better. Friday, I run into him at the boat launch at the end of the day, and he tells me, yeah, I'm having real good luck with the amber with like purple flecks. Oh, okay. Well, let me just tell you that Saturday, November 7th, November 8th, and Monday, the 9th, in 25 to 30 feet of water using the right bite baits, 2.5 inch amber with purple fleck. I did 52 smallmouth with 30 fish between 4 and 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with multiple 5-pound fish, A6, and on the 7th in the afternoon, my personal best at 7.4. And if people saw the picture, my number 2 best at 6.12. The next morning, I took that tube off and I've saved it because it was the same tube. That was my last 3 days, my last week up there that year. I had sold I love my Yarcraft 186 TFX because it's a great one-man boat, but it handles the big water. Anyways, I'd sold it. So I got to 2:00 on Monday. How's this for your, and I'm thinking, okay, my last day on the water up here, my last day in this nice boat, my last cast. 5-pounder. I said, this is a great way to end my year up here. So I have to tell you that I become, and again, last fall, October and November, in a little deeper water, 20, 25 feet, I'm using the right bite baits, tubes. I will tell you, we all want bargains. This type of tube packed with 10 in a pack at the bait shops is like $5.99. Gary Jeffrey, who owns Right Bite Baits, just raised his price for a 10-pack to $2.99 online. And their insert jigs, which again are much more expensive because a lot of bait shops buy from him and repackage. His 10-pack, this is the small one of 1/8. The 10-packs come for $2.99. So let me just tell you, that's better than any discount you'll find. So that's it, guys.
Absolutely.
You're looking at
that's solid.
The teeny wee crawfish. You're looking at the Kalins. You're looking at the slim swims. You're looking at the Ned Rig with the TRD or the Tube Z, which I use the TRD more often. And you're looking at the Kitech Fat Swing Impact. That's not a lot of lures. I mean, here we're looking at not many lures for, a lot of smallmouth bass. And even before 2007 and the Kalins, I was still using a curly tail. It just wasn't nearly as good. Or I was using a fluke jerk bait type thing. I wasn't using a lot of stuff. The teeny wee crawfish goes back with me on the rivers almost to day one. So for me, it's very simple. It's less stuff in my boat. It certainly makes kayak fishing great. And as I told Zach and Chad earlier, a little box with my teeny wee crawfish and my jigs, and my other pockets got some Kalins, some Z-Man, and some Kitech. It makes it really easy to do my fishing. And, the nice thing is that with my group, where I do get feedback all the time, in all the years I've been recommending these things, I've got one email from a guy who was with the Kalins, and he was very nice. He goes, Bill, you'd say these are so good. I just am not doing anything with them. So I email him back and go, how are you fishing it? Well, I'm jerking it and bouncing it off the bottom. I go, no, you swim it back steady and as slow as you can. If you tick a rock, speed it up. That's how they were designed by Mr. Kalin years ago. And that's how I swim the Kalins, I swim the Kitech, and I swim the slim swims. As slow as I can, steady. Usually with those, quite honestly, I used to do more against the current and cross current. The last couple of years, I'm doing a little bit more with the current. And the teeny wee crawfish, honestly, for years, mostly against the current to get extra wiggle or cross current to get more vibration. I have to tell you, I even am learning this year. I'm doing a little bit more with the current because I can judge the speed on this better than some of the others I mentioned.
Right.
And it's been working great in all situations. So, that's pretty much it. And I have to tell you, as Chad and Zach will tell you, with the Ned Rig, I was sitting. It's funny. They run it was the biggest smallmouth bass tournament in the world until recently, but the Sturgeon Bay Open. And I'm up there in 2019 on the Friday before the tournament, and everyone's pre-fishing. And I've got the guys that ended up taking third out of 200 boats behind me, watching me catch 10 5-pounders. And I got my Canon D10 camera on a ram mount on my windshield, and I hold the fish. I hit my self timer. I smile. I put it in the water. Well, I'm out on this fairly shallow, and I got a Ned Rig out there on a really nice St. Croix rod with a really nice reel, and I get a phone call. Well, thankfully, I heard the rod and reel heading out the back of the boat.
Oh,
I
man.
lunged at it. So point being is sometimes with the Ned Rig, just letting it sit there,
Absolutely.
let the current do its thing is what you should do. Same with a tube. Whereas, you always want to twitch it a little bit.
Mhm.
Sometimes watch your little twitch in a swimming pool or clear water. That little twitch moves a Ned Rig or a tube a lot more than you think. So it's a lot better to just almost let them sit with just every little bit of a twitch once in a while. I don't pick up a rod that's sitting there with a Ned Rig on ever without expecting a fish. And many times there is a fish on. So, but I don't ever turn my back to it.
And it was a lure that I fought very hard. I did not want to throw it at all. I was very stubborn. Now I find that it is in my hand constantly. Everywhere I go, it doesn't seem to matter. That's one of the baits that I'm going to throw at some point throughout the day, no matter what's going on. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to throw it.
Well, Chad, you're like me. We're a little more probably A personalities. You mentioned it. You mentioned that earlier. And so I have to tell you what helped me was early on, I learned quickly that with the Kalins, for example, slow and steady. And we're not talking like this. We're talking slow. And and every once in a while I have someone with me and they're really good fishermen. And I'll go, no, you're reeling too fast. Yeah. And the slower, the better. And that helped me because when I got to the Ned Rig, I was able to be slower because I'm more of a make that cast with the teeny wee crawfish, a little faster reeling.
Yep.
That's more my personality. But because of the Kalins and these other swim baits now and the Ned Rig, I'm pretty good at keeping it really slow.
That's one reason in the past we went to lower gear ratios on reels just so we would go slower.
Right. And that's why I have to tell you I'm sure why I'm being sent these reels because if I'm out there liking the I love the Daiwas, but I'd like the Flugers, Supreme and Supreme X. He obviously wants me to try them. The reason why, and I understand the slower retrieve ratio, but especially when I'm in the clear water, like I said, and I heard as Dale Stroshine did a great talk at the sports show in Milwaukee, and I followed him, and we had a little fun because he told the story about being right there when I did the 7-4, and he kind of handed it off to me, and then I finished the story. But Dale, who guides up there all the time, he's a great guide. He talked about the colored line so you can see your line. He also talked about, a lot of times, halfway in with some of these things, now it's time to get it in. That's why I want to get it in fast and make that cast again. Absolutely. But we'll try the slower retrieve ratio and see how I like it. But for me, I do like the 6.2 to 1.
Well, and I think that's the fun thing about fishing is even as we become seasoned with years and years and years, I think it's important that we keep learning. I still change my reel speeds. I actually just went through a phase where I bumped them up a notch just because I felt like, okay, well, I'm missing fish. I need to speed this thing up. I've played with the rod. I know that, the rod's helped. So I'm going to speed up my reel, make just minute changes all the way across the board. And, I think those are things that helps. I think, and fish change their mind from time to time. Some days just a little uptick in speed can help. Some days, if you slow it down just a little bit,
I have to tell you you guys are enjoying this because you're not even looking at the time. I just go, wow, this is just flowing by.
Well, we're in good conversation, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I did notice, Bill, and this is one of the questions I want to ask you, and this is a tip that I think people are more recently talking about is the chartreuse head on your Ned rigs. It seemed like you were using a lot of the chartreuse head. Now, is that the big tip I think that's going around right now is, the fish see those chartreuse heads a lot better. Do you feel that that's the case?
I do. And I did want to mention, I showed you guys the Big John's jig earlier from Gopher, and sadly, Gopher was a phenomenal company that Nat Straw would always talk about, and others. They unfortunately went out of business. They used to provide a sample pack for me. I gave away 7,000 or 8,000 at my talks, but they went out of business, not because of the product, but because of the management it was down to just one guy. And thankfully, a couple from Northwest Iowa, Ron and Stacy, bought it. And I got to tell you, their jigs, I love them. And my jigs from them this year are all chartreuse. And I found it interesting. And again, I mentioned Dale Stroshine, Freshwater Hall of Fame top guide, and Dale only fishes chartreuse. And
Right.
my feeling has been, I began in 2007 thinking, and on the rivers, thinking that, the chartreuse, the color might be a little bit of an enhancer for the fish to see it. So,
Right.
You know what? I found it to be better than the unpainted or black or even the dark green. So that's what I use. I use chartreuse. I don't think it hurts, and I do think it helps. So in all my Gopher jigs, all my Z-Man jigs, it's all chartreuse, and I'm just going to stick with it. And those that I've recommended, and nobody said, Bill, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. Most have enjoyed going to the chartreuse or some brighter color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think Zach and I will both attest to, because we're both kind of the same way in this. We get caught up in the match the hatch to the point of maybe over obsessive, where we don't stray in a lot of colors. We'll pretty well stick with very neutral, blue shimmers and different things, and like those holographic colors where it just, it has a little bit of that shimmer to attract the fish, but it looks natural in certain lights and different things like that. So it's one of the things that's kept me away from the chartreuse head, because I sit there and I think, well, that's not natural. And I fight myself on
just
that.
Try it. Try it if you like it. I don't match the hatch almost ever.
Right.
And I get asked on the color on the teeny wee crawfish all the time. You know what? I put on they don't make it anymore. The color chrome, like bright chrome with a little black back. It was phenomenal the other day on my river in southeast Wisconsin. But up in one of the reasons, there are a lot of reasons why the fishery in Sturgeon Bay and Door County has been going downhill. I don't need to get into all of them. But the last couple of years have been a lot of alewife. So the fish are gorging on alewife. Well, I was in the kayak and in my boat, a month and a half ago, and actually found quite a few fish on the Lake Michigan side, all by myself out there. But I was using colors that look dark on top, light on the bottom, like an alewife. Right. And I think it probably helped because that's what was in the food chain. So, it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those things. This has worked for me. I'm getting close to the 30,000. And to be honest, on August 4th last year, did I think I'd be looking at 30,000 by early October in like just over a year? And the answer is no. So now I'm kind of fired up. Gee, do you think I could hit 35,000 next year? I don't know. We'll see.
It's possible.
We'll see. That'll be a lot of waiting. I'll have to keep going to the gym and work so my legs are good.
Well, Zach's about carried me out of a creek once, so he can.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, hey, listen, I'd love to wade with you guys sometimes. And as I told Chad, even though the fishery is not quite what it used to be, hey, 2 years ago, November, to have my 2 personal best after I mean, up there alone, I'm at over 11,000 smallmouth, and it's not been what it has been, but there's still great potential for your personal best. And even so, if you guys ever want to come up, I got a nice boat up there, and I keep 2 really nice Jackson kayaks, and I've got a Malone trailer here and there. Makes it, hey, that I'll tell you guys, a Malone trailer with the low bars with a Coosa FD is so nice.
Oh, yeah.
It makes it so easy for me to get that thing back on.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I actually back mine in, and I've been a fan of that just because it speeds it up for me just a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Keeps me from scratching up my.
And anybody
roads.
who uses a trailer, I've been using Malone trailers since 2010, and I put a bunch of them together. But I got to tell you, that low bar compared to the normal bar, it is a game changer for these heavier kayaks.
Oh, I can imagine.
And the nice thing is their hubs are waterproof, so you can back it in. So you're just barely pushing it on. So
Yeah.
That goes a long way. And for all you guys out there that are, I mean, these kayaks are an investment just like anything else. And just stuff like backing them in the water and pulling them up on the trailer can go a long way to protect your investment, no matter what brand you're using. So, check out Malone, check out some of the other brands out there, and get yourself a trailer if you need one.
Well, there again, it's easier on you too after a long day of fishing, and
I'll attest to that.
On the water.
It's a lot easier. I don't mind backing it down the ramp at all, and it gets me in and out of the way, so people are not waiting on me to drag my boat off.
I've got one ramp where it's next to a house that was for sale last year for $5.5 million.
Wow.
And I was making it's public, but I went and knocked on the door this spring, and I was shocked. The couple that bought it are like in their 40s. And I just wanted to let the woman know, thank you for letting us launch there. I don't tell anybody where I'm launching, but thanks for letting me launch there. And
well, that's cool. Well, Bill, as you said, we're at an hour and 15 minutes, and we are gonna kind of let you go here. Let's I know you've got people that you need to thank and tell people where to find you and how to get a hold of you on social media. I'm going to let you do that as we kind of start the outro here.
Great. Well, I thank you for that, guys. I'm kind of an odd case, meaning, being involved both from a wading standpoint, from a kayak fishing standpoint, and from a boat standpoint. And I've been with Jackson Kayak for quite a few years. Obviously, I love the boats. I'm involved with bending branches and aquabound paddles. Obviously, St. Croix rods. And if you watch what I'm wearing in the water, boots, waders, and vest, frog togs, they're reasonably priced and they work great for me. And then I'm on the pro staffs with Yarcraft boats and Mercury Marine. And so I enjoy the products are all phenomenal. And it really gives me an opportunity to cover all the bases. I'm not just stuck with wading or the kayak fishing. If I need to get out on the big water and, 3-4 footers, I've got the boat. So I'm very pleased. And, I mentioned the Gopher tackle and the Kalen's Lunker grubs and the Z-Man products and the Kitech products are all just really good products. I don't use things that don't work because, as I get older, my time is even though I'm retired, my time is important because I don't know. I've got less time than someone who's a lot younger. And so I want to make sure my time in the water is productive, and my competition are my numbers. So, that's what I do. And I want to use things that are going to get me, catch me and release as many smallmouth bass as possible. SmalleyCentral@gmail.com. If anyone's interested, again, like I mentioned, I release everything, and I'm very careful, and I try to stay away from bed fishing. I wrote a very long article with North America's leading expert, David Phillip, PhD, who's done more research on this than anyone in the world. And the bottom line, my 3,000-word article comes down to bed fishing doesn't help the fishery. So that's how I do it. So I've got articles if anyone wants them, or if you would like to be on my Smalley email group, just let me know. And guys, thank you so much for having me on, and we'll keep you posted on as to when I hit 30,000, and hopefully it's a 3 or 4 pounder and not a 9-inch river fish, but that would still be okay.
Hey, that's still a heck of an accomplishment, Bill, and we are excited to hear when you do cross over to the 30,000 mark. But thanks for being on the show. We greatly appreciate it. I know we both learned a lot. We're going to drop you back down below. We're going to close this thing out.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
We'll be right back with you, Bill.
Thanks for being on.
Educational and
absolutely
efficient. I like it. So there we have it. Orion Podcast episode number 17 is in the books. What'd you guys think? More smallmouth talks? What we need? We've got a few people in the comments tonight stoked. They're stoked over the smallmouth. Gene says I need to ring the bell for 30,000. Gosh, I'm gonna have to get a new button.
Oh man,
that's a whole new thing. So next Orion podcast, today is the 20th. We will be back in action. Gosh, October 4th. Can you believe that?
Yeah,
it's October 4th, man.
Yeah, so the nights are getting cooler and the deer are moving, man.
The deer, it's going to be deer season in Indiana when we come back. So,
I made 2 ice cream runs last weekend, Friday night and Saturday night, and there's an alfalfa field about 100 yards that way, and there was 40 deer in that field each night, and it was all I could do not to just park the truck in the middle of the road and just watch them.
For the record, Zach does look like Captain America in real life, as you've probably seen from our pictures on Orion's Instagram page. But truth be told, he does like his ice cream an awful lot. Don't get in the way of Sunday ice creams.
Yep, every weekend.
So yeah, we'll be back on October 4th. We're excited to see you guys then. We'll get us a guest lineup. I don't think we've made it to October 4th.
Yeah,
I think we dropped the ball. We got to get on that. So
I'll make a. Well, I can't make a phone call because he's international, but I'll send a text.
Send a text. Shoot us an email, and hopefully we will see you guys again. Jackson Kayak Dock Talk. We will be back on Thursday night for Jackson Kayak Dock Talk. We've got a great panel, and we're excited to share some more fishing stories with you guys right here on the Orion Podcast Network. Are we a network now?
News to me, but it sounds like
I like it. We're going with it. Orion Podcast Network. Check us out, jacksonkayak.com. Hope to see you there. Get an Orion cooler. Tag us, Orion Coolers on Instagram. Send us your picture. Send us your picture listening to the podcast. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right. We're out. Thanks for watching.
Later.